One, we talked yesterday briefly about reading chapter one so that we can prepare for today's course. Um, you have a couple of assignments tonight, so I'm going to try to get through this topic as quickly as possible just to give you an opportunity to read chapter one if you haven't, and also start to read chapter two in preparation for tomorrow. So, just as a recap, do you guys have any questions about yesterday? I see everyone was able to post, thank goodness. So you've been able to get into your classroom. Hopefully that process was simple enough. All right. So if there are no questions, we're going to go ahead and get going. When I started the conversation yesterday about what this class is all about, I explained that, anytime a person gets a new degree, right? When we all get our college degree, it helps to give us an entry into an industry. But what it does not do is lay out for any of us, myself included, a career plan, right? There's so much you can do in your respective industry. It's good in one way that we've been able to narrow down what fields we want to be in. But it can be bad in another way in the sense that if you don't know what you want to do in your industry, then you are pigeonholing yourself. So you guys are going into the electrical industry. You have to do research on your industry to figure out, am I going left? Am I going right? Am I going up? Am I going down? Do I know what's going on in my industry? Do I know the different avenues I can take in my industry? And once I figure out which lane I want to be in, now I have to decide, is that even a good lane for me to be in? And then if I decide it is a good lane for me to be in, now I have to figure out what's my plan for success, depending upon what it is I'm trying to do, right? Am I trying to do high voltage, low voltage? Am I trying to work in the transportation industry? Am I trying to work in the housing industry? Am I trying to do commercial electrical? Like, what am I trying to do? There's so many avenues that you can take. So what we want you to do in this class is to really explore your industry because a lot of what you do in your career plan is going to affect your money. Like, we understand that. And you want those things to make sense for your personal goals, right? So you're not going to say that, I want to be able to, afford to be financially independent, and the career that you take doesn't make sense for that. So if you look in your industry and you determine that, okay, in order for me to make the most money possible in the electrical field, I need to specialize in, electronic engineering, for example, and focus primarily on, um, you know, uh, you know, you, I'm sure a cross between these data centers and electrical is a big field right now. And I only say that because I have a background in IT. Right now, I do some AI prompt engineering. Don't throw eggs at me because I do work in the AI field a little bit. I contract out to do that work. And I know that we are using tons and tons of electricity. Like, it's a big deal. If you've watched the news, you see all the drama surrounding that. So I already know that that is going to be a big industry for people in your industry. You need to figure out what lane you want to be in and make sure it makes sense for what your financial goals are. So basically, your career is going to vary from person to person. Just because each of you are in the electrical course right now, all of you may be taking totally different pathways because as we'll soon learn, you're obtaining this skill set, but you already have your own respective skills that you're bringing to the table that will make you unique from the person sitting next to you. So your career path is going to be unique to you. There's a big difference between a job and a career. So even if some of us may have a job already, that's great. And even if you have a job in the electrical industry, that's great, but that's not a career, right? And you may say, well, it's the start of a career. Um, Not really, right? You're working in your industry. Your career is going to be determined upon what goals you set for yourself, right? If I say I want to be a doctor and I'm going to go to school to be a doctor, without even being in that industry, you already know that there's a lot of different types of doctors. So can you imagine me going to school and I say, I want to be a doctor? They're going to say, what type of doctor do you want to be? And I'm going to say, well, I'll just go to medical school and I'll figure it out once I graduate. Yes, I can go to medical school. They're going to teach me a lot of different things about being a doctor. I don't necessarily have to choose an avenue right away. Now, it would make sense because then it would determine like the type of classes that I take. But by the time I graduate, if I don't choose a field, what's going to happen? I'm going to say, well, I'm just going to take whoever takes me, because I need to do my 3-year residency. I still don't know what type of doctor I want to be, but I know I want to be a doctor. Am I really building my career, or am I just being in the medical industry? Yeah, I'm a doctor, but I'm just at the mercy of the industry. Whoever hires me is what I'm going to do. Can you imagine? Or does it make better sense if I say, okay, I want to go into the medical field. I know I want to be a doctor. Let me do some research to see what type of doctor I want to be. Oh, I really like internal medicine because I really want to understand, how medicine affects the heart. So maybe I want to deal with, internal medicine specifically as it relates to, cardiology. Now I'm starting to hone in on the type of work I want to do. And then I decided I want to go work for like John Hopkins Hospital because they do a lot of research on internal medicine as it relates to cardiology. Now I'm setting the plan. Now I can say, okay, well, while I'm in school, let me learn as much as I can about this industry and how to get my foot in the door. I'm going to try and get a residency, if not at John Hopkins, at a hospital similar to that, or at least do something that has to do with internal medicine or cardiology, right? Now I'm building my career. I'm not just saying, hey, I got my degree in medicine and my life is going to be great. That's not how you build your career. You have to find your lane. There's a lot of websites. Two are listed. I mean, a few may be listed in chapter one. One is the Occupational Information Network. The other one is the United Department of Labor. If it's still working, who knows right now? But they used to put out a lot of statistics on how the industry is doing. You need to do some research on how your industry is doing. What the hottest avenues are. Does that make sense for you? Because you'll want to create some type of plan, and that plan is a documentation, and it starts with where you are today versus where you want to be over the course of your career, right? These items that will be listed on your career plan, they're action items. They're things that you need to do to get from point A to point B. If I want to be in internal medicine, working in cardiology, I need to figure out, okay, I'm in school today, but how do I get there? By doing that research, it'll help me figure out the steps to get there. One other thing I may need to figure out too is that even the right path for me? You know, I thought I wanted to be a doctor when I was in the army, and I was already thinking about, okay, when I leave the army, what am I going to do? At the time, I was in administration, I was working in finance and HR type work, but I thought I wanted to be a doctor. So I had the foresight to start volunteering at the hospital. So I was taking some medical classes in college while I was in the Army, and I volunteered at the Army hospital. And you can see as of today, I'm not a doctor, right? Because they ran me out of there. I'm telling y'all right now, listen, I did not know that I did not like the smell of hospitals. Am I the only one that does not like the smell of a hospital? My brother, a lot of my family members work in medicine. I don't know how they do it. Like I go in the hospital and I feel like well, I don't want to say anything negative, but it feels very dismal to me. That's all I'm going to say. Like in my mind, I'm thinking about what happens at a hospital, right? Good things happen at a hospital and bad things happen at a hospital. And I don't know what it is with me. The psychology behind it just drove me nuts. And I remember even asking my brother, who's been doing it for almost 25 years, like, dude, like, you know what happens at a hospital? Like, you don't ever see stuff. And he was like, okay, I don't want to freak you guys out, but he's like, he saw stuff. Y'all know what I'm talking about, like spirits and stuff, right? And he was like, yeah, I've seen some stuff. And I'm like, I can imagine because, the hospital's like the gateway of life and death. So much is happening all the time. I couldn't do it. But had I not done that research, had I not, volunteered at it, I wouldn't have known. Can you imagine if I would just said, I'm just going to go to school and I'm just going to learn to be a doctor and then, wasted all my time. So it's going to be important to know, do you even have the capacity to do that work? And that's why it's good to take what we call these self-assessments. And you'll be taking a self-assessment today as part of your assignment, is to do a self-assessment just to see, what do you even have the temperament and the personality to do something that you want to do. Maybe you feel like you want to own your own business, and maybe you want to become a master electrician and then start your own business. Who knows, right? But do you have the temperament to own your own business? Does that even make sense for you? Right? So, and after you do this self-assessment, now you can start to set goals for yourself. And we're going to talk about what those goals look like. So, I want you to look at yourself almost like a business. You have to, the same way companies make plans for themselves, essentially, guys, you are a business. Now, you may be a sole proprietor, is what we call it, but you are a business because essentially you are trading your service for compensation. When you go to a job, you sign a contract. When you get that offer letter, most of us don't think of it in that way, but that's what it is. It's a contract. And you're signing a contract to be paid compensation for your services. If you start looking at yourself like a business, you're investing in your business right now, right? You're gaining knowledge. And I'm sure, like every good investment, you want to maximize on that return. So you always have to think of yourself as a business, and you always have to think in terms of, how do I maximize my return? Because you want to be a successful business entity, right? You're going to have to be the person to steer that ship. You have to think of, what are my long-term goals as a business entity? So think of yourself incorporated. I am Cynthia Taylor Incorporated. How do I run my business? The same way a company has long-term goals, you need to have long-term goals. And those long-term goals will then have these short-term goal steps that will help you get to your long-term goals. And we're going to talk about that. And the other assignment you'll be doing today is to set these long-term goals, but I'm going to show you how to do that. So if I need to figure out a plan for myself, and that is what your finished product will look like in week 4, this outline of a plan, um, and I know I need to do some research. Like many of us may not know exactly what we want to do in the electrical field just yet. So I'm going to challenge you starting today to start to do research on your industry and to pick a lane, start to pick a lane. Um, to help you do that, we want you to take a self-assessment, and it helps you to measure, who you are as a person, and give you some insight into the type of lanes that will make sense for you, whether you're in the electrical industry or not. Um, when you take these self-assessments, it helps you to get information about who you are as a person, your personality, your values, your natural aptitude, and your abilities. When we talk about aptitude, for example, that is an individual, what an individual has developed naturally, things that you can do naturally. Some of us may have an aptitude for test taking. I know I had an aptitude for absorbing a lot of information. I'll never forget being in kindergarten. And I remember poignantly when my kindergarten teacher saw that I could read, and she was so taken aback by that. And apparently, I could read at an advanced level. So much so that, and I remember the little reading circle, I remember the classroom, everything. I remember her telling me I had to stay back and not go to lunch, and I was thinking, like, what is up with that? And she took me down to like the first grade teacher's classroom, and she was like, this young lady can really read. And they were all, like so flabbergasted by it. And then they told me that I was going to start going to this first grade class and reading with this class. And then they put me in a special class, this special reading. And from there I went on, and to be in these advanced classrooms and stuff like that. I didn't know I had this aptitude to read, and then special. It's not like I was given a lot of books at home. I just picked up on it. What I did notice was that anytime I went to the library, man, I wanted to be a librarian. I wanted to be around all those books. For some reason, books just took me to another place. I had an aptitude for taking in a lot of information. You may have an aptitude for something. Like, I wish I had this aptitude for being able to just know how things work. Like that's something that my daughter has an aptitude to do. I don't know how she does it. She can just figure stuff out just by tinkering with it. I can't do that. I have to read the instructions from start to finish because maybe it's just my comfort zone before I start something. But she has an aptitude to just learn how to do things on her own. Even if you do have an aptitude, if you know what your aptitude is, you also need the ability to do it. Like, you still have to have the capacity to do something. I can learn how to play softball. I can read up how it works, the techniques on it. But let me tell you right now, it's not a skill set. I don't have the capacity to do it. I tried it and it did not work because I do not have hand-eye coordination. And I learned that the hard way. I remember when I got hit by my first ball. I don't know what it is. My body just doesn't move right. Your girl does not have good hand-eye coordination. That's all I'm going to say to that. My kid, and I don't know what it is. They always say your first daughter, I only have one, takes after the father, and it must be true because she looks like him and she has good hand-eye coordination. I don't. I could throw this kid something across the room, and without looking, she can catch it with one hand behind her back. I don't know how she does it. You throw it at me, first of all, I'm dunking. It's gonna crash into the wall. Don't throw anything at me. For I wear glasses. Let's start there. I'm just not good at it, right? I do not have that type of ability. So I can learn how to play softball, but I can't do it. You got to figure out what you have aptitude for and what do you have the ability to do. Like, even though that you're in electrical, you still need to figure out, once you do some research on the different lanes you can go down, do I have the aptitude to do that? Is that something I could do? And do I have the capacity to do it? Does it make sense for me? You also want to think about your personality. Let's be honest, right? Even if I were in the medical field, let's say I could stomach being in the hospital. Let me tell you right now, I would not be working in the emergency room. I'm not your girl for that. Do I love helping people? Absolutely. I love helping people. And that's not to say that I couldn't do it, but for me, helping people is not the issue. I don't like surprises. Can you see the the problem with working in an emergency room? I don't like surprises. So I would be mad. I don't like the thing. I like knowing what's going to happen. You would have to put me in a different department, maybe the research lab, where I can lay out everything I want to do for the year, and I can do my research, and I can be by myself, and I can just be happy. That's me. Don't put me in an emergency room where I don't know what's going to happen from day to day. You have to know your personality. You're going into an industry. Are you the type of person that's very logistical, that you're very linear, like me? You're very task oriented. Are you the type of person, how do you know if you're task oriented? If you're the type of person that likes to write things down and put little check boxes next to it, and write things and cross things off of your list when you're done, that means you're task oriented. If you're a linear person, meaning you like to do step one, step two, step three, step four, you need to be in an industry where that makes sense. Don't put yourself in an environment that doesn't work well with your personality. They say that we do the best when we do things that are natural. Does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up if what I'm saying makes sense to you, right? Do not set yourself up for failure. This is your career, my friends. The game time is over. You are spending money. You are investing in yourself. You don't want that type of drama, right? So we want to do things that make sense for us. Lastly, you want to make sure things are in alignment with your value system, right? You don't want to be put in a situation where you have to compromise who you are as a person. Yes, we understand? So that is why we want you to take that personality test. It is going to be important because when you go out for jobs, they're going to be asking you, or saying in their job advertisements that we look for people with this type of skill set. We look for people with that type of skill set. We call those soft skills. The skills that you are learning in your career now, those technical skills, those are your hard skills. Like, so you're at your respective campus, you're learning these technical skills or hard skills, but companies also want soft skills. Like, do not be deceived and think just because you know how to do electrical work that you're going to get a thumbs up and say, hey, let's go. They're going to be looking at other parts of you and making sure that your soft skills are in alignment with what they need. If you're working for Duke Energy, for example, and they do a lot of residential work, and you're going to be customer facing, for example, and they want you to be an effective communicator and have some patience and be a good problem solver. Does that sound like you? Right? Anybody could say, yeah, 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 that's me. But is it really? Like, do you really want to deal with customers? Are you really a people person? If you know that's not you, why even go down that lane? You can't say, oh, I just need a job, right? That is going to get you in trouble. You want to do things that make sense for your personality, and that's why it's going to be important to pay attention to those soft skills. And we're going to really dig into how to identify these skill sets on Thursday when we start to look at job advertisements. Of course, every company is going to want you to have technology skills. In chapter 1, we'll talk about that. But let's get into the other thing that you'll be doing today. And this is really the first step in a 3-step series for that completed career outline that you'll do in week 4. You need to start planning, and we want you to have 2 long-term goals. We want to make sure the long-term goal passes what we call the SMART test, though. In order for you to start to manage your career, think of yourself as a business, like we said, you have to set goals that are very specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. What does that mean? That means that if I set a goal, it needs to have these attributes such that I can make myself accountable and I can measure how well I'm doing. So if I go back to my example of saying that I want to become a master electrician, If I wanted to see if that passed the SMART test, that statement, my long-term goal is to become a master electrician. Well, is it specific? Yeah. It says my long-term goal is to become a master electrician. But if I say, is it measurable? And I look at what the metric is for measurable, it says it has some type of target to it. I didn't give it a date of any sort, so I don't know if it would pass the measurable test. Is it attainable? Well, if I'm in an electrical program and my long-term goal is to become a master electrician, I think that's attainable. Is it realistic? I also think it's realistic as long as I don't say I want to become a master electrician tomorrow. That may not be realistic. But is it timely? I didn't give it a date once again. So it's not truly a full goal. My long-term goal is to become a master electrician. That's nice. When? Oh, okay, okay. Let me rephrase that. My long-term goal is to become a master electrician by 2031. Oh, that makes sense now because if I'm in school and it's 2026, I know it may take me a few years of being an electrician before I can, go sit for the test to become a master electrician. But that's a very smart goal because it's very specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's realistic, and it's timely. And it's something that I can hold myself accountable to because now I can measure that. I can say, okay, once I say my long term goal is to become a master electrician by 2031, then I'm going to teach you in the coming weeks how to set short term goals to get to that place. So even if it's my first step is to get a job, and I'm going to get a job at a small company, but they also have this great apprenticeship program. My second goal is to work there for 3 years, and then I'm gonna start studying for the master electrician exam. My third step is to maybe go get a certain certification in XYZ for whatever. So whatever the steps may be. And then in year 5, I'm going to sit for the master electrician license. Okay, so now these are short-term goals. That's going to help me get to that long-term goal. um, it's important that I set that date because then I can know how long do I have to get to that goal. If you don't set a date on it, then it's just a dream. One day I want to be a master electrician, right? That's going to be forever because many people will just kick that can down the road, and what are the chances that they'll ever be a master electrician? So if you don't put dates on stuff and you don't specify what it is you're trying to do so that you can plan it, the chances of success are not high. Yeah, you may be in the electrical field, that's great, and maybe you may stumble upon success, but let me tell you right now, most people plan success. They don't just stumble into it, right? It's got like me graduating from medical school and say, I'm going to be a great doctor. I have no idea what type of doctor I want to be. I just know I'm going to be a doctor. Yeah, good luck with that, right? So, part of your career planning is setting these long term goals that will allow you to set these short term goal steps. Does that make sense? Because at the end of the day, your career path is a strategy. And the strategy is not, let me just get a diploma so I can go start working. That's not a strategy, right? Um, chapter 1 will talk about, a career ladder approach where, you get in the entry level, and sometimes people stay at jobs. I mean, it's not very common, but people do still stay at certain jobs or at least stay in certain industries and kind of work their way up to the top. So let's say if you decided that you wanted to maybe go into construction and maybe work your way up to the top as whatever that top could be. Once you figure out what that is, you can totally do that. Like you'll see an accountant, for an example, will start out as a junior accountant, then a senior accountant, then they go on to be over the finance department, and then some go on to be CFOs, and they actually start out at the bottom at the entry and work their way up to the top. Other people may have different approaches. Somebody else may say, well, I don't want to do this linear approach. Maybe I want to start out as an electrician, for an example, but my goal is to be a general contractor. So I may have one specialty as a electrician, but then I may go back and learn drywall, or then I may even go back and learn HVAC because I want to be a project manager. And then eventually I may want to become a general contractor. And so being an electrician is not necessarily a linear pathway to become a general contractor. You may have other degrees or fields that you sidestep into before you work your way up to being a general contractor. So everybody's pathway is going to be different depending upon what it is you're trying to accomplish. Make sense? So, your career portfolio then will be based upon what it is you're trying to accomplish, whether you're going to start out as an entry level person and work your way up to senior leadership. You're going to start out as an electrician and start your own business. You're going to start as an electrician and maybe become a general contractor. Whatever your portfolio is, everybody's is going to look different. I hope it makes sense, guys. I'm not seeing any thumbs in the air or anything, so I'm just hoping you guys understand. So, if you don't have any other questions with that, and next week, what we'll also talk about is once you figure out what it is you're trying to do, then next week, we're going to talk about promoting your business. So this week, and again, the business is you. We're figuring out what type of business we want to have, i.e., what type of career we want to have. And then next week is going to be all about promoting yourself, whether you're interviewing online, LinkedIn, meeting people, elevator pitches, figuring out what your career persona is going to be. That's next week, right? So we'll read about it now and we'll dig into that next week. So what are you doing today? Technically, you have three different things you have to do. Number one, I want you obviously you're going to do your participation question, but for your assignment, you have two assignments. You have one to take this personality test. So once you go to the assignment, it's going to look like this, and it's going to say personality test. Click on me, take the personality test. It's going to send you to a website. Make sure obviously you want to pay attention to it anyway because it's going to help you think about what you want to do in your career. But once you're done with that test, you're going to come back here and you're going to do step one and step two. You're going to tell me what your results were. You can write out your results, or if you want to, copy and paste your results with a little summary that they give you, is fine. And then just tell me if you felt like it was accurate. Like, why did you feel like it was accurate, or why did you feel like it wasn't accurate? That's what you're going to do for this test, for this assignment. And then the other thing you're going to do, make sure you read this assignment because it just talks a little bit more about career planning. And then it tells you today you're going to do the first step in this outline process that you'll do throughout this course, is try to set at least two long-term goals. So if I go back to my example and I say, my first long-term goal, my long-term goal is to become a master electrician by 2031. But let's say I have another long-term goal. My second long-term goal is to start my own business by 2035. So my first long-term goal is to become a master electrician by 2031. My second long-term goal is to own my own business by 2035. And that is what I want to see today. Obviously, if you're not ready to do that long-term goal today because you want to do some research, go do the research and just turn it in by Sunday. All right? All right, so here's your participation question for today. Thinking about these hard and soft skills, and we're going to be talking about hard and soft skills more tomorrow and Thursday, I want you to identify three of the top hard skills, i.e., technical skills, that are unique to your career. You should know what those are, hopefully by now. Being that you've been doing these technical courses, like what are the three skills that every electrician needs to have when they step out, to apply for something? And then thinking about what makes you different, I want you to tell me what you think your three top soft skills are. If you don't remember what soft skills are, you can always look in chapter 1. It identifies all the different soft skills. Pick three that you think, okay, these are the three that I think I already have. Maybe I already know I'm a good project team lead person because I've had to do that in the past. or whatever you feel like you're good at, right? So tell me what your top 3 hard skills and top 3 soft skills, and keep those in mind because we'll be digging into that tomorrow. All right, y'all. Y'all real quiet. I don't even know if y'all paying attention to me. Y'all could be watching Super Mario or something. I don't know, but whatever. Um, since you guys don't have any questions, I'm done for tonight. So if you don't have anything else from me, if you don't need anything else from me, rather, you are free to go. Thank you so much for doing your participation questions on time. Please turn it in as soon as possible to get your attendance, and I will see you guys back here tomorrow. Have a great night.